Glad you joined. And thank you for giving us a few minutes of your time so I could show a bit of the user interface that Nutanix provides. What I mentioned earlier was that we've got a single user interface that provides a number of different function features. Whether you want to manage a platform, whether you want to manage a single cluster or multiple clusters on multiple sites, a single user interface called Prism. So that's the tool that we use, and is set up so that it's also highly available, much like the technology makes the workloads highly available by providing redundancy or resilience. Prism user interface runs on every single node within the cluster. So if you've got a node, you've got access to Prism. Prism users are set up as local or directory users or LDAP users, and they're configured with role-based user access. So you can configure a user administrator, for example, to manage users within Prism. You create a user that provides cluster administrator capabilities, configuration, alerting, policies, or you could set up a user to just provide read-only access. Certain organisms or roles within organizations that just need to take a look at a dashboard view, for example. HTML5 based interface, so any browser access will get you there. There are Flash or Java requirements, so it's pretty to maintain. And the dashboard. This is the dashboard view. So when you log in, you come up with the dashboard. It's a way to bring important or critical items to the forefront, whether they're metrics or alerts or statistics. It's all on the front page here. In fact, you can customize the dashboard to your own liking. So in other words, you could create your own dashboard. You can see I've created one here. It is by some really high-level views. It's pretty good, but the basic performance information I've included here: latency, bandwidth, IOPS, plus usage. It's all real-time metrics as well. A real quick on current or recent alerts that may have occurred. So I can take a look at that. It looks like a high number, or it looks like the number's changed. I can quickly go up here and just click on the alerts menu and take a look at those individual alerts. And ability to cut business, management type business at a lot of different levels. Manager, for example, may just be an occasional simple log to take the dashboard, find what's in the forefront. It's a current usage, current performance, as I mentioned, system health. Or you want to just configure a data digest, which include a cumulative list of alerts and specific metrics that you may want to look at. So in essence, you may never have to actually log on to the user interface. If you're a manager, you could just get a daily digest emailed to you. Administrator, there's a little bit more detail and probably a number of features that are of great importance. It provides the ability to customize, as I mentioned, the dashboard. And then for the system administrator, the ability to drill down quickly and other interfaces for initializing or modifying some configurations, creating VMs, opening up VM consoles, for example, to configure storage efficiencies, so application compression. There may be specific changes that you want to make on storage containers to provide those efficiencies. So it's a quick way to go in there and set up policies for snapshots and replication. And there's a number of different usages, but again, for the application owner or the workload administrator, provides a view of current performance and consumption of resources, and it also provides a portal into what we call our service provisioning capability. So you can take it to another level for those stakeholders, for example, who own the applications, business critical applications, the workloads that run in the environment, and give them access to a self-service portal so that they can provision, manage, deploy, change, update in all applications. Again, that sort of contributes to the whole transformation theme. If you can take some of user management environment and hand it over to the users themselves, you just freed yourself up for other things. And you've also shortened the length of time it takes to provision for specific workloads. You can see on this dashboard view there are a number of clusters. So in this case, there are 4 clusters. Each one of them are here. By clicking on these clusters, you can drill down quickly into those clusters and manage at a level. It's a way to holistically, be at a high level or a drill down all the way to the virtual disk level, for example. I'll show you how we do that. Ways to quickly management capability is this in-search capability. Magnifier, type in a keyword, immediately get responses and and next level management capabilities. So I typed in the word runway, and what we're showing here, among other things, is just the overall runway for each one of these clusters. And that's how many days left before you run out of resources. And that's based on analytics that have been collected and then machine learning that's been applied to those resource consumption analytics to provide for forecast. A little bit deeper, for example, here, this is a runway for each one of these clusters, for example. You quickly go deep, take a look at things such as performance on specific VMs. So here, taking a look at virtual machine IOPS. So those are a virtual machine greater than 1,000, and immediate a listing of particular virtual machines that are currently running more than 1,000 IOPS. You can click that virtual machine and dive down into it really quickly. So a way to identify certain parameters, certain entities, and then pull down. The other things that you can do at this dashboard level is look at species. Again, this is a higher view of the data center. So each and every Nutanix cluster is included in this view. We can take a look at virtual machines, for example. If there was a specific deployment milestone that's going to be planned for, and a lot of eyes are going to be on it. For example, a VDI deployment and then a subsequent boot storm, right? So the first time you bring up these active virtual desktop machines, and maybe 100 of them, you could go here and select those machines, bring the performance view, and as that boot storm occurred, you could take a look individually at those virtual machines and see how they're consuming resources. One of the other features that we recently introduced was this capacity planning capability. Planning submenu here, and then clicked on the capacity runway. There's scenarios and there's a runway, and I'll show you both of those. I'm going to take a look at one cluster in particular and look at the capacity planning that's current, and then add on some workloads, or what we call scenarios, with specific parameters, specific deployment dates, specific consumption rates. So what we're looking at here is current runway for this particular cluster. You can see it's an AHV cluster, but it could be any cluster. And the individual forecast for these resources, so memory, CPU, runway. We can take at what the real data is. There's a data for future, and then how, based on those trends and those consumption rates, what runway would look like. And we're in pretty good shape here, as a matter of fact, 365 plus days for each of these resources. So we're not in a situation. But if to this capacity planning, if we want to plan for something that's going to be deployed in the future, this is where we would do it. First of all, we'd set a target 6 months out. So we want to know what's going to happen 6 months out. You can change this to 12 months out. You can change it to 1 month out based on your development cycle, your refresh cycle, your upgrade cycle. The loads list, these are workloads that either are applied or will be applied at certain points. And checkbox those as you want to apply them. The one, this is the current workload and the current consumption rate. Now I've put in some of these scenarios and look at those and how this will impact the current forecast. This is a virtual desktop infrastructure. I selected some parameters around that, knowledge workers, 100 of those, and then on a particular date, those will be deployed. I'm just box that. Once that, you can see that the runways for each of the so now in 65 days, we've got 19 days. This is kind of far-fetched. You probably would be planning on 19 days, but to give you the idea. So we're running out of certain resources, 19 days. That means we need to add something. We need to do something. Foundation, and there's a specific resource that's being recommended. It has a date to deployed so that you head off this run issue with a specific configuration. So an NX1065 model, 2 with configuration such as this be deployed in order to accommodate. And you can go in here and you can modify this. You might say, hey, 400 gigabyte SSD probably is not going to be enough, and I don't feel comfortable with that. And maybe there'll be a little bit more than 100 users added. Not certain. Maybe a little bit less. But we can change that configuration, add it. Now you can see, of course, the runway is accommodated all the way out to into 365 days. Planned out, and you may add other workloads, you may want to change it around. You can create a report that's applicable to what's current, what's planned, and then dates and the configurations that be added. So just you can see there's a summary for the current cluster, current runway based on the consumption and the mole for each of those resources. The modified cluster parameters. So base target date was 6 months or 180 days. Here's what is expected to be consumed that we on the capacity planning model, and then the hardware that would be added. And delivered to management. Pretty simply to hold the approval process, for example. Any questions on that? So going to the capability that I mentioned. Again, from you, managing 4 clusters. I click direct on one of those clusters. The open piece that manages that cluster. So this is where we get to the view and the feed for updating, for adding, for removing, for configurations, maybe adding network cards, for example. This to the cluster. So, expansion. If you were to go in for this new VI workload, now let's say you've put it, it's arrived, you've physically powered it up, attached the network, it will automatically discover node or any nodes that are on that particular network. This is where you would see it, you could select it, you could be IP addresses. If you identified a range of IPs, they'll be automatically recommended. You can go and choose those IPs, and then you click the next button to the next step for expansion. Basically, that's just a go button that says expand with this node. And real time, without disruption, that node will be added. The data, everything will be feeded automatically to that node where applicable. And running, you can start putting virtual machines on the node. Also, is this cluster view is where you would manage specific entities, such as virtual machines. Virtual machines on the cluster, and select one specifically. You can quickly take a look at performance information on that VM, and update that virtual machine. On 5.1, we just introduced the ability to update or running them. So you do that within this interface. You can quickly look at the virtual machine performance all the way to the vDisk level, looking on the virtual disk itself. You can select that virtual disk and time metrics. So there's no limit really as far as the depth of query that you want to go on a virtual machine, for example. Also, view where we upgrade the software. As mentioned earlier, everything is non-disruptive. Add a node, upgrade software, upgrade the firmware. These are all available from the Prism interface. It is a downloaded, generally available copy of in the purview of this cluster. Then you would see it here, and you could click on it and upgrade. You go to the hardware submenu, click on it, for example, gives you a really quick illustration of what the cluster consists of as far as nodes and drives. There you would quickly identify a failed drive. There would be, of course, you can drive, you can turn on the LED so it can be physically identified, remove the disk from the cluster, physically removed, and then the new one popped in and you're running. So pretty simple to replace a drive. Not a lot of complexity there. So this is also the view where you would set up what we call data protection policies, are machine snapshots and replication of those snapshots, for example. So these already created out here. You select a data protection which is really a policy. Any sort of all the virtual machines that it includes. So these policies can include multiple virtual machines. If schedule created for the shotting, that would set. You can modify it so that there is a schedule. I noticed that this one is schedule, so you can click the schedule, create, repeat, 60 for example, every day on a weekly basis, start and dates, keep, so there's your retention policy, keep a certain number of snapshots, set it up, replicates that snapshot as well. Individual management. Thank you for joining again today. Appreciate your time. Please let me know if I can answer any questions in the future. Thanks.